Episode 1. The Boy Who Danced with Danger. October 1990. A young white man of 23 stands in front of 150 million viewers around the world, holding a microphone that weighs as much as the entire world. In less than 3 minutes, he will become the first rap artist to reach number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. But this glory will come at a price no one imagined paying. How did he get there? And why did everything he built crumble in less than 2 years? The answer begins 20 years earlier, in a place where no one would expect to find a future hip-hop star. The story of Robert Matthew Van Winkle doesn't begin with neon lights or roaring crowds. It begins on October 31st, 1967, in a hospital in Dallas, Texas, where an 18-year-old single mother holds her newborn son for the first time. The biological father, a man whose name will barely remain in the family memory, will disappear from their lives before the boy turns 4. The hospital room is small. The walls are faded white that cruelly reflect the fluorescent light. Outside, America is engulfed in the Vietnam War, student protests, and a cultural revolution that is breaking all the rules. But inside, in that anonymous room, there's only the crying of a baby and the trembling arms of a mother who has no idea how she will survive. Dallas in the 1960s is not the gleaming city of skyscrapers it would become decades later. It is a divided city where the scars of Kennedy's assassination just 4 years earlier still bleed in the collective memory. It is a city of brutal contrasts. Ostentatious wealth in some areas, desperate poverty in others. Robert's mother works wherever she can, waitress, cashier, anything that allows her to pay the rent for a tiny apartment in one of the city's toughest neighborhoods. Little Robert grows up surrounded by daily violence. From his window, he can hear gunshots in the night, sirens that never stop wailing, screams that mix with the music coming from nearby bars. But there's something different about this boy. Even at 3 years old, when most children can barely keep their balance, Robert has an almost supernatural sense of rhythm. When his mother turns on the radio, an old, cracked device that barely works, the little boy begins to move. These aren't clumsy baby movements. There's something instinctive about him, something that seems to come from somewhere else. 1971. Robert is 4 years old when everything changes. His mother meets a man at the supermarket where she works. His name is Van Winkle. He owns a used car business. And most importantly, he's willing to marry a single woman with a child. In the conservative Texas society of the early 1970s, this is no small feat. The wedding is small, almost private. Robert, wearing a suit 2 sizes too big, watches from a folding chair as his mother says, "I do," to a man who will now legally be his father. The surname Van Winkle replaces the name of the biological father he never knew. For legal and emotional purposes, Robert Matthew Van Winkle has just been born again. The stepfather isn't a cruel man, but he's not a warm one either. He's a practical man, obsessed with work, with the idea of the American dream built on hard work and discipline. He has plans to move, to leave Dallas, to seek better opportunities. And in 1973, when Robert is 6 years old, the family moves to Miami, Florida. The trip from Texas to Florida is long. More than 2,000 kilometers across the deep south of the United States. Robert travels in the back seat of a 1968 Chevrolet Impala, looking out the window as the landscape changes from dry prairies to green forests, from dusty cities to endless swamps. Miami in the 1970s is a completely different beast. It's humid heat that clings to your skin like a second layer. It's salsa music pouring from every open window. It's the beginning of the drug trafficking era that will transform the city into the epicenter of cocaine flooding the United States. It's a city where everything is at stake, where fortunes are made and lost overnight, where violence is as common as the sun. The Van Winkle family settles in Carrollton, a working-class neighborhood in northern Miami. The stepfather opens a small auto repair shop. The mother gets a job as a secretary at an elementary school. And Robert, now 7 years old, enrolls in a school where he is one of the few white children in a sea of Latino and African-American faces. Carrollton Elementary School is a miniature battlefield. Robert quickly learns that being different is dangerous. The African-American children regard him with suspicion. The Latino children speak to each other in Spanish, a language that sounds like music, but which he doesn't understand. The few white children there are grouped together, but Robert doesn't completely fit in even there. Their first fight occurs in 3rd grade. An older boy, at least 2 years older, decides Robert is an easy target. He pushes him against the playground bars during recess. The other children form a circle, that universal circle that exists in every school in the world when there's a fight. Robert isn't big, but he has something the other boy doesn't expect. A suppressed rage that comes from years of watching his mother struggle, listening to his stepfather complain about how difficult everything is, and feeling invisible in his own home. The punch he throws is clumsy but effective. The other boy's nose explodes with blood. The circle of children screams. The teachers come running. The suspension lasts 3 days. Instead of punishing him further, his stepfather has a conversation Robert will never forget. Sitting in the small garage of the auto repair shop, surrounded by the smell of oil and gasoline, the man tells him something that will become his life philosophy. In this world, no one is going to give you anything. Either you fight for what's yours, or it's taken away from you. It's that simple. Robert is 8 years old and has just learned the most important lesson of his childhood. But it's not all violence and survival. There are moments of light, of unexpected beauty. And for Robert, those moments come through music. Miami in 1976 is the epicenter of something new emerging. Disco music dominates the airwaves. Donna Summer, KC, and the Sunshine Band, the Bee Gees. But in the neighborhoods where Robert lives, another kind of music is growing in the shadows. The funk of Parliament Funkadelic, the soul of earth, wind, and fire, and something new that's starting to appear at block parties, breakdancing. Robert discovered breakdancing almost by accident. He was 9 years old when he first saw a group of teenagers dancing in an abandoned parking lot. It's not like the dancing he sees on television. It's wilder, more acrobatic, more dangerous. The kids spin on their heads, perform gravity-defying moves, and glide across the ground as if they had no bones. Something clicks in his brain. That rhythm he's always felt, that instinctive movement he's had since he was a baby, suddenly has a name, a shape, a purpose. He begins practicing in secret, in his room, moving furniture around to make room, in the garage when his stepfather isn't home, in the schoolyard before the teachers arrive. He falls 1,000 times. He scrapes his knees, hits his head, twists his ankles. But every time he falls, he gets up and tries again. At 10, Robert can do a full backflip. At 11, he masters a moonwalk before Michael Jackson makes it famous. By 12, he's known throughout the neighborhood as that white kid who dances like black people. It's not a completely innocent compliment. There's a prize in that phrase, and something darker, the suggestion that he's doing something that isn't his, that he's invading a space that isn't his. 1980. Robert is 13 years old, and Miami is burning, literally and figuratively. The Liberty City riots erupt in May after 4 white police officers are acquitted of beating Arthur McDuffie, an African-American motorcyclist, to death. The city burns for 3 days. 18 people die. Hundreds are injured. Robert watches the smoke rise from his neighborhood, sees helicopters constantly hovering overhead, and hears TV reports of looting and violence. Something is changing in America, and he's right in the middle of it. Robert's adolescence isn't spent at sleepovers or school dances. It's spent on the streets. He starts hanging out with older kids, teenagers who've already dropped out of school, who sell drugs on street corners, who steal cars for fun. Robert doesn't do the hard stuff. Something in him still holds him back, but he's there on the periphery, absorbing it all. He learns to speak like them. He learns the street slang, the way they walk, the way they look at someone who wants to test you. He becomes fluent in the language of urban survival. To any outside observer, Robert is indistinguishable from the other kids in the neighborhood, except for one impossible to ignore detail. He's white. This contradiction becomes central to his identity. He is not white enough to fit into white spaces. He is not black enough to be fully accepted in black spaces. He exists in limbo, in an in-between space that is uncomfortable and confusing, but also unique. 1981. Robert is 14 years old when he discovers another passion that will compete with dancing for his attention: motorcycles. His stepfather, always trying to channel his stepson's erratic energy into something productive, buys him a used motocross bike. It's a Yamaha YZ80, small but powerful, perfect for a teenager who needs speed and adrenaline. The first time Robert accelerates that machine, he feels something he's never felt before: absolute freedom. The roar of the engine drowns out everything else. The wind in his face erases all worries. Speed is a purer drug than anything sold on the street corners in his neighborhood. He begins racing on local circuits. He's not the best, but he's daredevil. He takes risks others wouldn't. He jumps higher, goes faster around corners, isn't afraid of falling. And he falls a lot. He fractures his wrist twice, breaks 3 ribs, and loses 2 teeth in a particularly brutal accident. But every time he falls, he gets up with a smile. The pain is real, but the adrenaline is more real. Motocross becomes his first legitimate addiction, the first thing he's willing to sacrifice everything else for. For almost 2 years, motorcycles have been his life. He goes to school only because he has to, but his mind is always on the next track, the next race, the next chance to experience that speed that makes him feel alive. July 1983. Robert is 16 years old and competing on a track in Hialeah, a suburb north of Miami. It's an important race, with scouts from professional teams watching. Robert knows this could be his chance to turn his passion into a real career. The race starts well. Robert is in 3rd place, gaining ground. The track is difficult. High jumps, tight corners, and deep sand sections that can unbalance even the most experienced drivers. But Robert is in his zone, completely focused, feeling invincible. Then it happens. On the 7th jump, something goes wrong. Maybe he accelerates too much. Maybe he misjudges the angle. Maybe it's just bad luck. The bike leans in the air more than it should. Robert tries to correct it, but it's too late. The impact is brutal. The motorcycle lands on its side, and Robert flies off, landing awkwardly, his body hitting the ground with sound everyone nearby can hear over the roar of the other engines. Paramedics rush in. The race stops. Robert is conscious, but barely. The pain in his back is like nothing he's ever felt before. He can't move his legs. Panic grips him. The paramedics stabilize him, load him onto a stretcher, and wheel him into an ambulance while the onlookers watch in silence. At the hospital, after hours of tests, the diagnosis was a severe spinal contusion. He's not paralyzed, thank God, but the damage is significant. The doctors are clear. He'll never be able to compete in motocross again. The risk of permanent injury is too high. For Robert, sitting in that hospital bed at 16, feeling like his future has just been ripped from his grasp, this is the worst moment of his life. He doesn't yet know that this accident saved him. He doesn't know that if he had continued in motocross, he probably would have died before he was 25. He doesn't know that this forced end is actually a new beginning. All he knows is that his dream is dead. The months after the accident are dark. Robert falls into a depression he doesn't understand. He's 16 and feels like his life is over. He stops going to school regularly. He distances himself from the few friends he has. He spends his days locked in his room, listening to music, feeling sorry for himself. His stepfather loses his patience. One night, after Robert refuses dinner for the 3rd time in a row, the man enters his room and gives him an ultimatum. Either go back to school and make something of yourself or get out of my house. I'm not going to support a bomb. It's tough, but it's effective. Robert returns to school, but he's changed. The light he had before the accident has gone out. He's darker, more withdrawn, angrier at the world. It's in this vulnerable state that Robert is drawn deeper into street culture. He begins selling marijuana for one of the local dealers. It's nothing big, just small amounts to other students, but it's enough to put money in his pocket, to feel like he has some control over his life. He also rediscovers breakdancing. Now, instead of practicing alone, he starts going to neighborhood parties where dance crews compete against each other. Robert is good, very good, and his white skin makes him stand out in a way that's part novelty, part provocation. He begins to form his own crew with other kids from the neighborhood, some white, some black, some Latino. They call them the Vanilla Ice Posse, a name that is initially a joke, a reference to his street nickname Vanilla Ice, which they gave him precisely because he's a white kid trying to act like he's not. But Robert embraces the name. Instead of being insulted, he makes it his identity. If they're going to call him Vanilla Ice, then he's going to be the best Vanilla Ice imaginable. October 1984. Robert is 17 years old. It's a typical Friday night in Miami. Humid heat, music blasting from every passing car, the smell of street food mingling with the aroma of the ocean just a few miles away. Robert is at a local club, one of those places that technically shouldn't allow minors, but where the bouncer looks the other way if you give him $20. There's a dance competition tonight, and Robert and his crew are ready to show off their skills. The competition is fierce. Crews from all over the city have come to compete. There's money at stake, but more importantly, there's respect. In today's growing hip-hop culture, respect is everything. Robert and his crew are good, but there's another group that's even better. A crew composed entirely of African-American dancers with years of experience. When it's their turn, they perform moves most of the people in the club have never seen. The crowd goes wild. When Robert's turn comes, he knows he has to do something special. He knows the only way to win is to risk it all. So he does exactly that. He attempts a move he's been secretly practicing, a spinning backflip that, if pulled off right, will make him a legend. If pulled off wrong, he'll break his neck in front of everyone. Run, jump, spin in the air, and it lands perfectly. The club explodes. People scream, jump, and push forward. Robert stands in the center of that chaos, sweating, breathing heavily, feeling more alive than ever since the accident. His crew wins the competition. They earn $500, which they divide among themselves. But more important than the money is the feeling. Robert has found something that can replace the adrenaline rush of motocross. He's found his new purpose. That night, walking home with his pockets full of crumpled bills, Robert makes a decision. He's going to become the best dancer in Miami, and then the best in Florida, and then the best in the world. He doesn't know yet that dancing is just the beginning. He doesn't know that in less than 6 years, he'll be standing on a stage in front of millions of people, not just as a dancer, but as something he can't even imagine yet, a rap superstar. 1985. Robert is 18 years old and a senior in high school. Technically, in reality, he's skipping more classes than he's attending, but he manages to do the bare minimum to avoid being expelled. It was during this year that Robert discovered rap as an art form. He'd heard rap before, of course. In Miami, it's impossible not to. Rapper's Delight by the Sugar Hill Gang has been playing for years. Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five are changing the game. Run DMC just released King of Rock and is breaking all the barriers between rap and rock. But it's when Robert hears Curtis blows the breaks that something clicks. The way the words flow over beat, the way the rhythm of the voice becomes part of the music, the way the rhymes create their own melody. It's like breakdancing with words. He begins writing his own rhymes. At first, they're clumsy, obvious imitations of what he's hearing. But slowly, he begins to find his own voice. He writes about what he knows. The streets of Miami, the struggle of growing up without money, the feeling of being an outsider in every space. His friends laugh at first. A white rapper? That's never going to work. But Robert doesn't listen. He practices constantly. He writes rhymes in his notebooks during class. He repeats them in his head while walking down the street. He perfects them until they flow naturally. He starts freestyling at parties. At first, people listen out of curiosity, for the novelty of seeing a white kid try to rap. But they quickly realize he's legit. Robert has flow. He has presence. He has something that's hard to define, but impossible to ignore. June 1986. Robert barely graduates from high school. His GPA is barely enough to receive his diploma. There's no special ceremony for him, no elaborate family celebration. His stepfather shakes his hand and says, "You're a man now. Time to work." The summer after graduation is brutal. Robert gets a job at his stepfather's auto shop. The work is hard, dirty, and poorly paid. He spends his days under cars, covered in grease and oil, breathing toxic fumes, wondering if this is all life has in store for him. At night, he escapes the clubs. The contrast couldn't be more striking. By day, he's an anonymous mechanic in an anonymous garage. By night, he's Vanilla Ice, the white MC who's just starting to make a name for himself in Miami's hip-hop scene. But there's a problem. Miami in 1986 doesn't have a real rap scene. Hip-hop is exploding in New York. It's growing in Los Angeles. And even Houston is seeing artists emerge. But Miami is known for freestyle music, for Miami bass, for genres that are cousins of hip-hop, but not exactly the same. Robert feels trapped. He knows he has talent. He knows he can compete with anyone. But he also knows he's in the wrong place. To make a real career in rap, he needs to be in New York. Or at least he needs some way for people outside of Miami to hear him. In 1986, there's no internet. There's no way to upload a video to YouTube and go viral overnight. The only way to get in is through radio or record labels or live shows. And all these doors seem closed to an unknown white rapper from Miami. November 1986. This is the night Robert will never forget, the night that almost ended his life before it had truly begun. There's a party at a downtown Miami club. Robert is there with his crew, rapping, dancing, having a good time. He doesn't know that there are also members of a rival gang in the club, guys who've been hearing about this white guy who thinks he can rap, and have decided he needs to be put in his place. The confrontation begins with words. Insults are hurled back and forth. Robert, feeling invincible after a few beers, responds more aggressively than he should. His crew tries to calm him down, but it's too late. One of the gang pulls out a knife. What happens next is chaotic and confusing. There are screams, people running in the club trying to evacuate. Robert tries to get away, but one of the gang members catches him. The knife goes in and out 4 times before the security guards can intervene. Robert falls to the floor, feeling his shirt soaked with blood. The pain is intense, but also strangely distant, as if it's happening to someone else. He thinks, with surprising clarity, that he's going to die on the sticky floor of a seedy Miami club, and no one beyond his small circle will remember him. But he doesn't die. The ambulance arrives in time. The stab wounds, miraculously, haven't touched any vital organs. He loses a lot of blood, but the doctors stabilize him. He spends 3 days in the hospital. As he lies there in that hospital bed for the second time in 3 years, Robert has a lot of time to think. He thinks about his mother, his stepfather, the life he's living. He thinks about the fine line between being alive and being dead. He thinks about all the talent he has, all the dreams he hasn't yet pursued. When he leaves the hospital, his wounds still fresh under his shirt, Robert Van Winkle makes a decision. Either do something real with his life, or he ends up dead on a Miami street before his 25th birthday. There's no middle ground. January 1987. Robert is 19 years old and standing in a makeshift recording studio in a friend's basement. It's his first time in front of a professional microphone. His first chance to record something real. The scars on his stomach are still raw. The memory of the razor is still fresh. But when the beat starts playing, all that disappears. There's only the rhythm, the words he's been writing for months, the chance to prove he's not just another street kid trying to sound cool. He opens his mouth and begins to rap. The words flow naturally, as if they've been waiting their entire lives to come out. His voice is clear, his flow is clean, his presence is undeniable. When he's done, there's a moment of silence in the studio. Then the sound engineer, a guy who's worked with dozens of aspiring rappers, smiles and says something Robert will never forget. "Shit, kid, this could be something big." Robert doesn't know it yet, but that home recording, that first clumsy attempt to capture his talent on tape, will eventually reach the hands of people who can change his life. He doesn't know that in less than 3 years, he'll sign a record deal. He doesn't know that in less than 4 years, he'll have a #1 single all over the world. But in this moment, standing in that damp basement in Miami, with scars on his body and fire in his soul, Robert Matthew Van Winkle, Vanilla Ice, has finally found his purpose. The question is no longer whether he can do it. The question is the world ready for what he's about to unleash? Episode 2, From the Asphalt to the Studio, March 1987. The demo tape Robert recorded in that basement is circulating around Miami. It's not an elaborate marketing ploy. It's simply Robert and his crew making copies on cassette and handing them out to clubs, record stores, to any DJ willing to listen. Most of those tapes end up in the trash or forgotten at the bottom of a drawer, but some end up in the right hands. There's a local DJ named Earthquake who's been on the Miami scene for years. When he listens to Vanilla Ice's tape, something clicks. It's not perfect, far from it, but there's something there, an energy, an authenticity that contrasts with the obvious gimmick of being a white rapper. Earthquake invites Robert to perform live at one of Miami's biggest clubs, a place called The Button, where all the emerging local artists compete for attention. Robert immediately accepts. This is his chance to prove he's not just a studio novelty, that he can sustain the energy in front of a real crowd. The night of the show, Robert is nervous in a way he's never been. Dancing is different. Your body automatically knows what to do. But rapping live, holding a crowd's attention with just your voice and your presence, is a whole different ballgame. His crew is there to support him. But everyone knows Robert has to do it alone. The club is packed. Maybe 200 people, a mix of African Americans, Latinos, and a few scattered whites. Most are there to see other artists, but when Earthquake announces Vanilla Ice, there's a murmur of curiosity. Some laugh. The name sounds like a joke. Robert steps onto the makeshift stage, really just a raised area with a sound system, and takes the microphone. For a second, there's only silence. The crowd looks at him, sizing him up, waiting for him to fail. Then the beat starts, and Robert explodes. The words tumble out of his mouth like bullets. His flow is aggressive yet controlled. He leaps off the stage, raps on the club floor, and moves through the crowd while keeping every word clear and precise. It's not just a musical act. It's a complete performance. He combines his experience as a dancer with his talent as an MC, creating something most of the people in that club have never seen. By the time it's over, after 3 songs that feel like 3 seconds, the crowd is going wild. Even the skeptics are screaming. Robert is drenched in sweat, breathing like he's just run a marathon, but smiling wider than he has in years. That night, after the show, at least a dozen people approach him to ask when his next performance is, where they can get his music. Among them is a man who introduces himself as Tommy Kwan, a promoter from Dallas who is in Miami looking for new talent. "Call me," Tommy says, handing her a card. "I think we can work something out together." Robert puts a card in his pocket, unaware that this piece of paper is the key that will open all the doors. May 1987. Robert makes a decision his stepfather can't understand. He quits his job at the auto repair shop and moves back to Dallas, Texas, the city where he was born but barely remembers. Tommy Kwan has made a promise. If Robert comes to Dallas, he'll get him shows, give him exposure, help him build a real career. It's a huge risk. Robert has no savings, no backup plan, no guarantees this will work. But the alternative is to stay in Miami, working in a garage forever, watching his dreams slowly wither away. Dallas in 1987 is a city in transition. The oil boom of the early 1980s has ended, leaving economic scars. But culturally, the city is beginning to awaken. The Texas hip-hop scene is in its early stages, years before Houston dominated the genre in the South. Tommy turns out to be legitimate. He's not a high-level manager. Not yet, but he knows the right people. He gets Robert to play shows at local clubs, at private parties. Anywhere there's a microphone and an audience. The pay is minimal. Sometimes just $50, sometimes just free food and drinks. But Robert is building something more valuable than money. He's building a reputation. What he quickly discovers is that Dallas is different from Miami. The audience is more conservative in some ways, more open in others. His status as a white rapper is both an advantage and a disadvantage. Some immediately dismiss him, refusing to give him credibility. Others are fascinated, curious to see if he can be authentic. Robert adapts. He observes the audience, learning what works and what doesn't. He becomes better at reading the environment, adjusting his energy to the club and the crowd. It's an education you can't get in any school, a mastery of performance that only comes from hours logged on small, sweaty stages. July 1987. Robert meets a DJ named Earthquake. Not the same earthquake from Miami, but another DJ with the same name, a coincidence they both find amusing. This earthquake becomes his official DJ, the man behind the turntables who provides the beats Robert raps over. Together, they form a formidable duo. Earthquake has an innate sense of rhythm and knows exactly when to change the beat, when to let Robert shine, when to add scratch effect that make the crowd go wild. Their chemistry is instant and evident. Also joining the team is a producer named Kerry, a guy from Oakland, California, who's temporarily in Dallas but has connections all over the West Coast. Kerry listens to Vanilla Ice and recognizes something others don't: commercial potential. It's not that Robert's music is commercial in the traditional sense, but there's something about his energy, his presence, that could translate beyond the underground scene if presented correctly. You need songs people can sing along to. Kerry tells Robert one night after a show, not just freestyles and battle raps. You need hooks. You need melodies. You need something that sticks in people's heads. It's a concept Robert initially resists. In mid-1980s hip-hop, there's an increasingly clear divide between conscious artists who focus on complex lyrics and social messages, and commercial artists who make music for the masses. Robert wants to be taken seriously. He doesn't want to be seen as an easy sell. But Kerry is persuasive. You can have both, he argues. You can make music that's catchy and also legitimate. Look at Run DMC. Look at LL Cool J. They're making hits, but no one questions their credibility. Robert finally agrees. They begin working on songs that have structure, memorable hooks, and radio play potential. It's a fundamental shift in his approach, and not everyone in his crew is happy about it. Some think he's selling out, that he's betraying the purity of underground hip-hop. But Robert has a clearer vision now. He doesn't want to be a local legend that only a few people remember. He wants to be a star, and stars have to shine bright enough for everyone to see. September 1987. Tommy Kwan, using his connections and spending his own savings, books time at a professional recording studio in Dallas. It's not a top-notch studio. That would come later, but it has real equipment, an experienced engineer, and most importantly, the ability to produce something that sounds professional. Robert enters the studio with a mixture of excitement and terror. He's recorded before, but always in improvised situations, in basements or in the back rooms of record stores. This is different. This is real. The first song they record is called Play That Funky Music. It's not an original. It's a cover of Wild Cherry's 1976 song, but Robert and his team give a hip-hop twist, adding modern beats, scratches, and Robert's unique flow over the famous hook. It's a strategic choice. Take a song everyone knows and loves, but give a fresh, contemporary twist. If it works, the familiarity of the original song might help people accept the new version more easily. The recording session lasts 12 hours. Robert raps the same verse 20 times, trying to get the intonation perfect, the timing just right. His throat is raw by the end, but the result is solid. When they hear the final mix, even the sound engineer, a cynical guy who has worked in the industry for decades, admits it sounds good. This could get airplay, he says, and they're the most beautiful words Robert has ever heard. October 1987 to March 1988. During these 6 months, Robert is constantly on the move. Shows in Dallas, shows in Houston, shows in Austin. Some are in clubs, others at college parties, some even in places as improvised as parking lots where someone has set up a sound system. His reputation is growing. He's no longer just that white rapper. He's now Vanilla Ice, that MC who can really do it. The distinction is crucial. He's gone from being a novelty to a respected artist within certain circles. The shows become more elaborate. Robert begins to incorporate dancers, his old-school breakdancing crew from Miami, who have moved to Dallas to support him. The performance becomes a complete visual spectacle. Robert rapping while the dancers do backflips and spins, Earthquake performing crazy tricks on the turntables, lights flashing to the beat of the music. It was during one of these shows in Houston that Robert met a concert promoter with connections throughout the South. The man was impressed by what he saw and made an offer. He wanted Vanilla Ice to be the opening act for several bigger artists touring the South. It's the opportunity Robert has been waiting for. Being the opening act means exposing himself to audiences who've never heard of him, audiences that belong to someone else but could become his fans if he does well. He accepts immediately. During the spring of 1988, Vanilla Ice opened shows for artists like 2 Live Crew, DJ Magic Mike, and other Miami-based acts dominating the South. Not everyone in these. Audiences accept him immediately. Some boo him simply for being white. But show after show, Robert is gaining ground, turning skeptics into fans. June 1988. An independent record label called Ichiban Records, based in Atlanta but with distribution throughout the South, approaches Tommy Kwan with an offer. They've heard of Vanilla Ice, seen his shows, heard his recordings. They want to sign him. It's not a major label. It's not Capitol Records or Warner Brothers. But it's legitimate. They have distribution. They have a marketing budget. They have the infrastructure to release a record that actually reaches stores. The contract they're offering is terrible by industry standards. Robert will be given a $5,000 advance, an amount that sounds enormous for someone who's been living on $50 a show, but insignificant in music industry terms. Royalties are minimal. The rights would mostly belong to the label. Tommy advises Robert to reject the contract, to wait for a better offer, but Robert is impatient. He's 21 years old and feels like he's been waiting his whole life for this opportunity. $5,000 is more money than he's ever had. And more importantly, a record deal means validation. It means this is real. He signs a contract in July 1988. Years later, he will acknowledge that it was a mistake, that the contract would lock him into unfavorable terms that would cost him millions. But in that moment, with the pen in his hand and the contract in front of him, Robert Matthew Van Winkle feels nothing but pure electric emotion. Officially, he's a recording artist. Officially, he's in the music business. October 1988. Robert spends almost 3 months in and out of the studio, working on what will be his debut album. Ichiban Records has given him a modest budget, but enough to hire decent producers and rent out actual studio time. The album, titled Hooked, will feature 9 songs. Robert pours everything he's learned into these tracks, his energy, his flow, his experiences on the streets of Miami and Dallas. He works with several producers, experimenting with different sounds, trying to find something that's unique but also commercially viable. The title track, Hooked, is an aggressive track about addiction. Not to drugs, but to music, to performance, to the adrenaline of being on stage. It's autobiographical in a way Robert hasn't fully articulated yet. Another song, Ice Ice Baby, almost didn't make the album. It's one of the last tracks they recorded, done almost as an afterthought. The song uses a sample of Queen and David Bowie's Under Pressure, a choice that will eventually cause massive legal problems. But at this point, no one is thinking about that. Robert just thinks the bass line is perfect, that his flow fits perfectly over that hypnotic beat. The lyrics of Ice Ice Baby are relatively simple compared to some of his other songs. It's about his experiences in Miami, about driving around the city, about street culture, about being dope on the floor and magic on the mic. It's vain, it's boastful. It's exactly what rap is supposed to be. When they finish recording it, Robert thinks it's a good song, but not exceptional. He has no idea that this song, almost left off the album, will eventually make him famous worldwide. January 1989. The album Hooked is released by Ichiban Records. Distribution is limited, mainly record stores in the South, with a few spots on the East Coast. There's no big marketing budget. There are no music videos. There's no advertising campaign. It's what the industry calls a quiet release. The record simply appears in stores, and the label hopes it sells on its own. And at first, it doesn't sell. In its first few weeks, Hooked sells fewer than 1,000 copies. The critics who hear it, a few, mostly ignore it. One reviewer for a small music magazine described it as another white rapper trying to appropriate a culture that doesn't belong to him. Robert is devastated. He's put everything into this album, his time, his energy, his street cred, and it seems like no one's paying attention. But Tommy Kwan doesn't give up. Using his own contacts, he begins sending copies of the album to DJs across the region. He sends copies to college radio stations. He sends copies to concert promoters. It's a guerrilla marketing campaign done on a budget that's almost non-existent. Slowly, very slowly, something starts to happen. A radio station in Georgia starts playing Play That Funky Music. Listeners call in to ask who the artist is. The station plays it more. Another station in Florida picks it up, then one in North Carolina. It's not an explosive success. It's a gradual, organic growth, driven by word of mouth and DJs who genuinely enjoy the song. February to June 1989. Robert spends these months on the road, almost constantly. Tommy has organized an exhaustive club tour, 20 cities in 30 days, then another 20, then more. The shows are small. Clubs hold up to 200 people, sometimes less. The pay is still modest. He now earns around $300 per show, which is an improvement but hardly makes him rich. After paying his crew, transportation, and lodging, Robert barely has enough to eat. They live in cheap motels, sometimes 5 people sharing a room with 2 beds. They eat fast food because it's all they can afford. They drive hundreds of miles each day in an old van that constantly threatens to break down. It's exhausting. It's unglamorous. It's nothing like the rock star image Robert had in his mind. But it's also educational. With each show, Robert gets better. He learns how to handle hostile audiences, how to turn skeptics into fans, how to maintain energy even when he's exhausted. He learns which songs work in which situations, how to read the mood of a crowd, when to escalate the energy, and when to let it breathe. It's during one of these shows in Macon, Georgia, that something unexpected happens. They're playing Ice Ice Baby, a song that's just one track among others on the album. And the crowd's reaction is different, louder, more visceral. People aren't just dancing, they're singing every word. Robert notices. After the show, he asks Earthquake, "Did you see that? Did you see how they reacted to Ice Ice Baby?" Earthquake nods. "Yeah, bro. There's something about that song. We should play it more often." They begin to do exactly that. Ice Ice Baby becomes their set closer, the song they end every show with. And every time, the reaction is the same. The crowd goes wild. July 1989. There's a DJ at a radio station in Atlanta named Daryl Skip Richards. He's been playing Vanilla Ice's Play That Funky Music regularly, but one night he decides to try something different. He puts Ice Ice Baby on rotation. The response is immediate and overwhelming. The station's phone lines light up. Everyone wants to know who this artist is, where they can get the song. The next day, Skip plays it again. Same response. He plays it a third time. The calls don't stop. Within a week, Ice Ice Baby was the most requested song on the station. Skip contacted other radio stations in nearby cities, sharing the track with them, telling them they needed to hear it. The DJs trusted Skip. He had a good ear, so they gave him a chance. Charlotte picks it up, then Nashville, then Memphis. It's a domino effect that's building station by station, city by city. In August, Ichiban Records realizes what's happening. Sales of the album Hooked are increasing, driven almost entirely by Ice Ice Baby. The song is selling copies of the album at a rate no one anticipated. The label makes a decision to release Ice Ice Baby as an official single. They print physical copies of the single, distribute them to radio stations across the country, and create a modest promotional budget. It was September 1989 when Ice Ice Baby officially entered the Billboard charts. It entered at number 99, a position so low that it could easily disappear the following week. But it doesn't disappear. The following week it rises to 82. The week after that, to 71. It's building momentum, climbing slowly but steadily. October 1989. Ice Ice Baby is now in the top 50 of the Billboard Hot 100. For an independent artist, this is extraordinary. Major record labels are paying attention. Executives from SBK Records, a label under the EMI umbrella, contact Tommy Kwan. They want to meet Vanilla Ice. They want to discuss possibilities. The meeting takes place in an office in New York, a city Robert is visiting for the first time. He's overwhelmed by the skyscrapers, the frenetic energy, and the sense that this city is the center of everything that matters in the entertainment world. SBK executives are blunt. They see potential in Vanilla Ice, but the contract with Ichiban Records is a problem. They need to find a way to get Robert out of that contract so they can work with him. What happens next is a complicated legal process that Robert doesn't fully understand. There are negotiations, there are lawyers, there are signed documents. What he does understand is this. SBK is offering advances that make Ichiban's $5,000 seem like chump change. They're talking about real marketing budgets, music videos, and making him not just a regional but a national star. In November, a deal is struck. SBK essentially buys out Robert's contract from Ichiban, paying the independent label an undisclosed but substantial sum. Robert signs a new contract with SBK, one that also has its problems, though he won't see them until years later, but which, at this point, represents the opportunity of a lifetime. SBK immediately puts their machinery into motion. They release a new version of Ice Ice Baby, remastered and with improved production. They create a massive promotional budget. And most importantly, they plan to film a music video. December 1989. Robert is on a film set in Miami, appropriately, the city where it all began for him. They're filming the music video for Ice Ice Baby. The video's budget is $100,000, an amount that makes Robert's head spin. There are dozens of extras, expensive cars, and a full production with multiple cameras and special effects. The video's concept is simple but effective. Robert driving through Miami in a classic convertible, rapping confidently, surrounded by dancers and the city's vibrant aesthetic. There are shots of the beach, the skyline, and the neon-lit night streets. Robert is in his element. This is his territory, his city, his culture. He raps with a conviction that comes from knowing exactly what he's talking about. He's not faking it. Every word, every gesture, every glance at the camera is authentic. Filming lasts 3 days. Robert raps the same song 50 times from different angles. It's exhaustive, but when he finally sees a final cut, he realizes the effort was worth it. The video is dynamic, colorful, perfectly designed for the MTV era. And when it was released in January 1990, that's exactly what happened. MTV picked it up immediately. January 1990. Robert Matthew Van Winkle, known as Vanilla Ice, is 22 years old. Ice Ice Baby has just entered the top 20 of the Billboard Hot 100. The video is in heavy rotation on MTV. His face is appearing on televisions across the United States. He's standing on a hotel balcony in Los Angeles, looking out at the city lights stretching to the horizon. Just 3 years ago, he was in a hospital in Miami, recovering from stab wounds, wondering if he'd survive to the age of 25. Just 2 years ago, he was working in an auto shop covered in grease, feeling like his life had no direction. Now he's on the brink of something he can't fully comprehend. The phone in his hotel room rings nonstop. Interview requests, show offers, people wanting a piece of what he's creating. His manager enters the balcony with news. Ice Ice Baby has just been certified gold. 500,000 copies sold. And counting. Robert should be ecstatic. And he is, on some level. But there's something else too, a feeling of vertigo, as if he's standing on the edge of a cliff and can't see the bottom. This is just the beginning, Tommy says, putting a hand on her shoulder. Next month, you're on Saturday Night Live. The month after that, you're on a world tour. You're about to become the biggest thing in music. Robert nods, but there's a question in his mind that he can't shake. When you reach the top, where's the only place you can go from there? He doesn't yet know that in less than a year, he'll discover the answer. He doesn't know that the fall will be much faster and much more brutal than the rise. But for now, on this perfect January night, with the lights of Los Angeles twinkling below and his future brightening even more, Robert Matthew Van Winkle allows himself to feel invincible. After all, she's 22 years old, and the whole world is about to learn her name. Episode 3, The Top of the World. November 16th, 1990. It's a Friday afternoon, and Robert is in a New York television studio, preparing for a late-night talk show appearance. His publicist bursts into the dressing room, breathless, holding a Billboard magazine. "You did it," he says with a smile so wide his face seems to hurt. Number 1. Ice Ice Baby is officially the number 1 song on the Billboard Hot 100. The moment that follows is strange. Robert should be screaming, jumping, celebrating. But instead, he just feels a strange calm, as if this news were inevitable, as if he'd always known it would come this way. Or perhaps it's just that everything is happening so fast that his brain can't fully process it. Ice Ice Baby isn't just number one. It's the first hip-hop song by a white artist to reach that position. It's a historic moment, a cultural milestone that will be dissected and debated for decades. At the SBK Records offices, there's champagne and celebration. In the hip-hop community, there's controversy and distrust. How is it possible that a white kid has achieved what so many talented black MCs couldn't? Is it really because of his talent? Or is it because the music industry and the American public were more willing to accept rap when it came from a white face? These are legitimate questions that will haunt Robert for the rest of his career. But right now, with Billboard magazine in his hands and the weight of that number one slowly sinking into his conscience, Robert can only think of one thing. Nothing will ever be the same. November to December 1990, Robert enters what can only be described as a relentless promotional blender. Every day is an avalanche of interviews, appearances, photo shoots, and shows. His schedule is absurd. He wakes up at 5 a.m. for a live radio interview, then a photo shoot for Rolling Stone, then an appearance on MTV News, then a flight to another city for a show that night, then another radio interview, then another photo shoot. The cycle never ends. He sleeps on planes, in cars, in the 15 minutes between engagements. He eats whenever he can, which usually means fast food consumed while someone is doing his makeup or dressing him for the next appearance. He loses weight rapidly, not because he's trying, but because he literally has no time to eat properly. SBK Records has invested everything in making Vanilla Ice not just a musical success, but a cultural phenomenon. And it's working. His face is everywhere. Magazines, television, billboards. Ice Ice Baby plays on every radio, in every club, in every mall. Vanilla Ice merchandise is selling out as fast as they can produce it. T-shirts, posters, even action figures. There are plans for a movie, a TV show, anything they can monetize while the Vanilla Ice name still means something. Robert is making money at a rate he never imagined possible. The checks arriving are in the six figures. He buys his first luxury car, a white Ferrari that matches his new nickname, the Vanilla Ice Mobile. He buys a house in Miami for his mother. He moves into a penthouse apartment in Los Angeles that costs more per month than his entire income in his first 2 years of making music. But there's a price that doesn't appear in any contract. Privacy is completely gone. You can't walk down the street without being recognized. You can't go to a restaurant without people pointing at you, asking for your autograph, interrupting your meal. You can't have a private conversation because there's always someone listening, always someone with a camera. His relationship with his girlfriend of several years crumbles under the pressure. She didn't sign up for this. For the groupies who now constantly stalk Robert, for the lonely nights while he's on tour, for reading rumors about him in gossip magazines. They end up in an explosive fight in December. She leaves. Taken with her a part of his heart she'll never fully recover. Robert fills that void with more work, more shows, more appearances. If he stops, if he has a moment of silence, he has to confront the reality of what he's losing. So he just doesn't stop. December 15th, 1990. This is one of the most important nights of Robert's career. Saturday Night Live isn't just a television show. It's an American cultural institution. Being the musical guest on SNL is a validation that you've arrived, that you matter, that you're relevant. Rehearsals this week have been intense. The SNL team has incredibly high standards. Every detail has to be perfect. The lighting, the sound, the movements, the timing. Robert, who is used to the chaotic energy of clubs, has to adapt to the almost military precision that SNL demands. On the night of the show, before going on air, Robert stands in his dressing room. Staring in the mirror, he's wearing his signature outfit. Shiny parachute pants, a leather jacket with exaggerated shoulder pads, and a haircut with shaved designs on the sides that will become iconic and instantly dated in equal measure. He looks confident. He looks like a star. But inside, he's terrified. This is live television, broadcast to millions of people. There are no retakes. One mistake here, one forgotten word, one misstep, and he'll be remembered for all the wrong reasons. When the moment arrives and he hears his name being announced, all that fear disappears. He walks onto the stage, the beat of Ice Ice Baby starts playing, and he goes into performance mode. It's instinctive now, almost automatic. He jumps, he dances, he raps every word with perfect precision. The studio audience is going wild. But more importantly, it's working at home. Ratings will show that more than 20 million people tuned in that night. 20 million people just saw Vanilla Ice confirm that he's not just a one-hit wonder, that he can sustain the energy on the biggest stage. After the show, at the after party, Robert is the center of attention. Celebrities he'd never dream of meeting approach him to congratulate him. Comedians from the SNL cast tell him he was amazing. For a moment, everything feels perfect. But there's also a moment late that night when Robert is sitting alone in a corner as the party continues around him, where he looks at all of this, the beautiful people, the expensive champagne, the celebration of success, and feels completely empty. It's a feeling you can't explain and certainly can't tell anyone. How do you tell people you've achieved everything you ever wanted, yet somehow still feel like something's missing? 1990s is drawing to a close, and to the extreme, Vanilla Ice's official debut album under SBK Records is dominating the charts. Technically, it's not his first album that was hooked under Ichiban, but SBK has done its best to erase that history, to make it seem like To the Extreme is where it all began. The album is a mix of songs Robert had been developing for years and new tracks created specifically to capitalize on the success of Ice Ice Baby. There's Play That Funky Music, the cover version that had already proven its appeal. There's Dancin', a more pop-oriented song designed to dominate dance floors. There are It's a Party, Rasta Man, tracks that showcase different facets of what Robert can do. But everyone knows that Ice Ice Baby is the reason people are buying the album. It's the hook. Everything else is just tacked on, and people are buying. To the Extreme sells 500,000 copies in its first week. By the end of December, it has sold more than 3 million copies. By early 1991, that number will double. Eventually, the album will sell more than 15 million copies in the United States alone, becoming one of the best-selling hip-hop albums of all time. The numbers are stratospheric. Robert is making money faster than he can spend it. His bank account has over $1 million, an amount that would have been unimaginable 3 years ago. But there's a problem brewing in the shadows, something that will soon explode and threaten to destroy everything. The unauthorized sample of Under Pressure in Ice Ice Baby. January 1991. Lawyers for Queen and David Bowie contact SBK Records with a lawsuit. Ice Ice Baby uses the bass line from Under Pressure without permission, without a license, without any kind of legal agreement. This is copyright infringement, and they're prepared to sue for millions. Robert and his team initially try to deny it. In interviews, Robert insists that bass line is different, that he added an extra note that makes it legally distinct. But this is obviously ridiculous. Anyone with ears can hear that it's the same bass line. The argument is so weak that it becomes an instant joke. The pressure mounts. The story is all over the media. Vanilla Ice accused of stealing from Queen and Bowie. It's a PR disaster. Not only does it make Robert look dishonest, but it reinforces a narrative that many in the hip-hop community were already promoting, that Vanilla Ice is a fraud. Someone stealing from black culture and now also stealing from established white artists. SBK's lawyers eventually negotiated an out-of-court settlement. The exact details were never publicly revealed, but reports suggest that Queen and Bowie received a massive sum, possibly several $1 million, plus a percentage of all future royalties from Ice Ice Baby. For Robert, this is a significant financial blow, but even more damaging is a blow to his credibility. Every article about him now mentions the sample controversy. Every interview includes awkward questions about why he didn't clear the rights before releasing the song. The truth, although Robert never publicly admits it at the time, is that he didn't know he had to do it. He was young, inexperienced, surrounded by people who were more interested in making a quick buck than doing things right. But ignorance is no excuse, and the damage is done. The sample controversy is just one part of a larger problem. the hip-hop community's growing hostility toward Vanilla Ice. For many in the rap world, Vanilla Ice represents everything wrong. He's a white artist making money off a culture that black artists created. He's someone who has reached levels of success that legendary MCs have never seen, not necessarily because he's better, but because the music industry and mainstream audiences are more willing to accept hip-hop when it comes with a white face. Public Enemy, one of the most respected groups in hip-hop, makes subtly critical comments about rappers who sell out to the culture. Ice Cube, in interviews, suggests that Vanilla Ice lacks real street cred. MC Hammer, who is in a similar position as a commercially successful artist, also faces criticism, but at least he's black. At least he has an authentic connection to the culture. Robert tries to defend himself. In interviews, he talked about his childhood in Miami, about growing up in tough neighborhoods, about his genuine connection to hip-hop culture. But these defenses often make things worse. When he talked about acting black or being one of the kids, it sounds like he's appropriating an identity that doesn't belong to him. There's a particularly painful moment in an interview with Arsenio Hall, a talk show host who is enormously influential in black culture. Arsenio asks difficult questions about authenticity, about cultural appropriation, about whether Robert feels he has the right to make this music. Robert, clearly uncomfortable, gives evasive answers that satisfy no one. Arsenio's audience, predominantly African American, doesn't applaud with the same enthusiasm as in other segments. There's a coldness in the room that Robert can physically feel. When he leaves the studio that night, he knows he's just lost an important battle for respect. February to May 1991. Despite all the controversy, or perhaps in part because all controversy is publicity, demand for Vanilla Ice remains astronomical. SBK organizes a massive world tour. The United States, Canada, Europe, Japan, Australia. It's the biggest tour Robert has ever been on. No more small, sweaty clubs. Now he's playing in arenas that can hold 10,000 to 20,000 people. There are massive lighting rigs, giant video screens, fireworks, the whole spectacle. Every night, thousands of fans, mostly white teenagers, mostly girls, scream his name with devotion that's almost religious. Robert has gone from being an artist to a teen idol, an object of desire, a poster on the walls of millions of teenagers. The groupies are constant. In every city, there are girls waiting outside his hotel, outside the arenas, trying to meet him. Some are underage, and Robert's team has to actively protect him from situations that could turn into legal scandals. Others are older, and Robert, young and now officially single, takes advantage of the opportunities that arise. It's a time of excess. Alcohol flows freely in the dressing rooms. There's marijuana. There's cocaine if you want it, although Robert is wary of hard drugs after seeing what they did to people in his neighborhood. But the alcohol is enough. Most nights he ends up drunk, with a different girl, in a hotel room that looks like every other hotel room. The tour is financially successful beyond all expectations. Every show is sold out. Merchandise sells in massive quantities. Robert is earning hundreds of thousands of dollars per night. But there's a cost that doesn't appear on any financial statement. Robert is losing touch with who he was. The Miami kid who danced in parking lots, who survived stabbings, who fought for every opportunity. That kid is disappearing, replaced by Vanilla Ice, a marketing construct that's becoming more real than the person underneath. April 1991. The tour reaches Japan, and it is here that Robert experiences the absolute peak of his fame. Japan in the 1990s is obsessed with American culture, especially hip-hop music. Vanilla Ice is treated like royalty. There are thousands of fans waiting for him at the airport, so many that he needs a police escort. The Japanese media constantly follows him. Every public appearance causes mass hysteria. The Tokyo shows are the biggest of his career to this point. 20,000 people singing Ice Ice Baby in broken but enthusiastic English. The sound of those voices, that volume of pure adoration, is something Robert has never experienced and will never experience again. There's a moment, during the third show in Tokyo, when Robert is standing on stage looking out at the crowd, watching 20,000 lighter lights swaying to music, listening to the deafening roar of adoration, when he realizes, this is the highest he'll ever be. It's not a conscious thought. It's more like an intuition, a knowing that comes from somewhere deep inside. He's reached the top. He's 23 years old and has already achieved more than most people accomplish in a lifetime. What comes next? How do you top being the biggest music star in the world? He has no answer to that question. So he does the only thing he knows how to do. He keeps on with the show. May 1991. The tour ends and Robert returns to Los Angeles. He should be happy, satisfied, ready to enjoy his success. But instead, he feels empty. The financial numbers are extraordinary. To the Extreme has sold more than 10 million copies worldwide. Ice Ice Baby is one of the best-selling singles of all time. Robert is a millionaire several times over. But the backlash is growing. Music media, especially publications that take hip-hop seriously, are becoming increasingly cruel in their criticism. Rolling Stone publishes an article titled "The Fraud of White Rap." Spin magazine names him Worst Artist of the Year. Critics are dissecting every aspect of his story. Someone discovers that Robert exaggerated parts of his biography. Not that he completely lied, but he definitely embellished. The street fights became more dramatic. The gang connections were exaggerated. The poverty of his childhood intensified. MTV, which was instrumental in making Vanilla Ice a star, is now backing off. VJs make jokes about him. New generations of hip-hop artists like A Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul, Gang Starr, represent more authentic, more conscious sound, and Vanilla Ice is increasingly seen as a relic of a bygone era. And most troubling, sales are starting to decline. To the Extreme is still selling, but not at the explosive speed it was 6 months ago. Radio stations are starting to play Ice Ice Baby less. The momentum is passing. Robert denies it at first. He tells himself this is just a temporary slump, that things will pick up with the next album. But deep down, he knows the truth. The world is already moving forward, and he's being left behind. During the summer of 1991, Robert immerses himself in what he hopes will be his next big move, a movie starring himself called Cool as Ice. The premise is simple and formulaic. Robert plays a rebellious rapper who arrives in a small town and falls in love with a hot girl. It's basically Grease, but with hip-hop instead of rock and roll. The studio is banking on Vanilla Ice's fan base to make this a box office hit. The film's production is a disaster from the start. Robert has no acting experience. The dialogue is terrible. The direction is amateurish. The entire project reeks of a desperate attempt to monetize his fame before it fades. Robert does his best. He memorizes his lines, takes the acting lessons he's given seriously, and tries to find something genuine in the ridiculous character he's playing. But even he can see that it's not working. There's a moment during filming where Robert has to say the line, "Drop that zero and get with the hero." It's supposedly a cool line, something fans are supposed to repeat. But when he says it, even the film crew can't help but laugh. Not at the line, at how ridiculous this whole thing has become. Cool as Ice opens in October 1991. It is savaged by critics. Roger Ebert gives it half a star. The New York Times calls it painfully bad. Audiences agree. The film makes only $1,300,000 in its opening weekend, an absolute disaster. The failure of Cool as Ice is symbolic. It's the moment when it becomes clear to everyone, including Robert, that Vanilla Ice isn't a lasting phenomenon. It's a fad, and like all fads, it has an expiration date. 1992. Robert is in the studio working on what is supposed to be his second album, the follow-up to the Extreme, which will prove he's not a one-hit wonder. But everything is wrong from the start. SBK Records is pressuring him to make Ice Ice Baby Part 2 to create another massive commercial hit. Robert, trying to gain credibility, wants to do something darker, more serious, more real. These visions are fundamentally incompatible. The album they eventually create, Extremely Live, is a disastrous compromise that satisfies no one. It's primarily a live album with a few new songs. The audio quality is mediocre. The new songs sound forced, as if Robert is trying too hard to prove a point. When Extremely Live was released in March 1992, the response was lukewarm at best. It sold 500,000 copies, a number that for most artists would be a success, but for someone whose previous album sold 15 million, it's a catastrophe. Radio stations barely play the new single. MTV barely plays it. Media outlets that once couldn't stop talking about Vanilla Ice now completely ignore him. It's as if he ceased to exist. Robert starts drinking more. Clubbing, once considered celebrations, is now a means of escape. The girls are still there, but now they feel more like empty transactions and validation. There's one particularly dark night at a club in Los Angeles where Robert, drunk and angry, gets into a fight with a group of guys making comments about how he used to be famous. The fight turns ugly. The police arrive. Robert ends up at the police station, not arrested, but close. His publicist manages to keep the story out of the media, but it's a warning sign Robert can't ignore. He's spiraling downward. June 1992. Robert is 24 years old. Exactly 18 months ago, he was the biggest music star in the world. Now he's a punchline, a joke, a relic of an era people want to forget. He sits alone in his Los Angeles apartment, a penthouse that costs $15,000 a month, and feels bigger and emptier every day. On television, MTV is playing Nirvana's new video. Grunge is taking over. Hip-hop is evolving toward more conscious, darker, more authentic sounds. Vanilla Ice doesn't fit in anywhere anymore. His bank account still has millions, but the checks have stopped arriving as frequently as they used to. Tour offers have disappeared. The endorsements that once filled his mailbox are now going to new rising stars. Robert, sitting in that empty apartment, realizes a fundamental truth. The fame he built was like a sandcastle, beautiful for a moment, but destined to be washed away by the tide. You can try to hold on to it. You can keep pretending that it still matters, that it's still relevant. Or you can accept that this chapter of your life is over and try to figure out who you are without the name Vanilla Ice. He doesn't know yet which path he'll take. He doesn't know that he'll spend most of the next decade lost, searching, falling deeper and deeper into a depression that nearly kills him. But in this moment, in this quiet apartment with a view of Los Angeles stretching out before him, Robert Matthew Van Winkle finally understands what should have been obvious from the beginning. The fall from the top is much, much longer than the climb. October 1992. Robert is standing on the stage of a club in Phoenix, Arizona. It's not an arena. It's not 20,000 people. It's maybe 300, and half of them seem to be there out of nostalgia or morbid curiosity. He's playing Ice Ice Baby for what feels like the millionth time. The words come out automatically, without thought, without emotion. It's as if he's outside his body, watching himself go through the motions. When the song ends, there's applause, but it's polite, obligatory. It's not the deafening roar of 2 years ago. It's the applause you give to someone who used to matter. After the show, Robert leaves through the back door to avoid the few fans waiting. He climbs into a van with his small crew, now reduced to just a few loyal members, and begins a journey back to his hotel. No one speaks during the ride. Everyone knows what no one wants to say out loud. This is over. Vanilla Ice, as a cultural phenomenon, is dead. The question now is whether Robert Matthew Van Winkle can find a way to live with that ghost. In his hotel room that night, Robert stares at his reflection in the mirror. He's 24 years old, but he looks older. Years of partying, lack of sleep, and constant stress have taken their toll. He wonders, was it worth it? All the success, all the money, all the fame? Was it worth this emptiness he now feels? This feeling of being a fraud in his own skin? There's no answer. Not yet. That answer will take years and much pain to discover. But what he doesn't know, he can't see from this low point, is that Vanilla Ice's story won't end here. There will be more chapters, some darker than this one, and eventually, improbably, a kind of redemption no one, especially himself, could have predicted. For now, in this Phoenix hotel room, Robert Matthew Van Winkle simply turns off the lights and goes to sleep, hoping tomorrow will be different, knowing in his heart that it probably won't. Episode 4, The Downward Spiral, 1994. Robert is in a recording studio in Los Angeles, trying to completely reinvent himself. He's abandoned the Vanilla Ice image, the outrageous haircuts, the bright clothes, and now looks like a grunge rocker. Long hair, budding dreadlocks, dark clothes. His new album, called Mind Blowin', is designed to show that he's a serious artist, not just a passing fad. The sound is harder, darker, with heavy rock influences mixed with hip-hop. It's his attempt to be taken seriously. But the music industry isn't interested anymore. When Mind Blowin' is released, it's almost completely ignored. It sells less than 100,000 copies. Radio stations don't even consider it. MTV rejects it. It's as if Robert has ceased to exist for the mainstream. 1995. Robert is living alone in Miami, back in the city where it all began. But it's not a triumphant return. It's a defeated retreat. He spends days at a time, without leaving his house. He drinks vodka from the moment he wakes up until he passes out again. The walls of his house are covered with gold and platinum records that now seem like cruel mockeries of what once was. His family is worried. His mother visits and finds the house in a disastrous state. Empty bottles everywhere, rotten food, closed curtains blocking out the sunlight. "You need help," she tells him. Robert throws her out. He can't bear to see the disappointment in her eyes. July 1995. This is the darkest night of Robert's life. He's sitting in his garage with his motorcycle engine running, and the doors closed, waiting for the carbon monoxide to kill him. He's written a note, though he won't remember what it said later, and he's ready to end it all. He's 28 years old and convinced his life is over. He can't stand being a joke. He can't stand the emptiness. He can't stand the person he's become. He's minutes away from losing consciousness when his stepfather, worried because Robert hasn't answered calls in days, shows up at the house. He breaks down the garage door, turns off the engine, and drags Robert outside into the fresh air. They don't call an ambulance. The scandal would be devastating. But the stepfather stays with Robert all night, making sure he's breathing, that he's alive. "Not after everything we've been through," he tells him. "I'm not going to lose you like this." August 1995. Robert is in a rehab clinic in Northern California. Not for drugs, although he drinks too much, but for severe depression and suicidal thoughts. For the first time in years, he has to confront who he really is without the fame, without the Vanilla Ice persona, without the distractions. It's painful and brutal. In therapy sessions, he cries for the first time since he was a child. A therapist asks him, "Who is Robert Van Winkle without Vanilla Ice?" Robert has no answer. His entire identity was built around that character. Without him, he doesn't know who he is. 1996. Robert leaves rehab with a newfound clarity. He knows he can't be Vanilla Ice again. That character is dead and gone. But maybe he can find something else. He rediscovered his love for motorcycles, not for racing. His doctors were clear about that after his accident years ago. But for customizing, for building, for creating, he bought battered bikes and rebuilt them piece by piece in his garage. It's therapeutic, working with his hands, creating something tangible, something that isn't about fame or image or other people's expectations. For the first time in years, he feels like himself. 1997. Robert meets a woman named Laura at a motorcycle parts store. She has no idea who he is, or she does. She doesn't care. She just sees a guy who shares her passion for motorcycles. They start dating. It's refreshing to be with someone who didn't know him as Vanilla Ice, who has no expectations about who he should be. They get married in March, in a small ceremony with only close family. In 1998, his first daughter was born. Holding that baby in his arms, Robert felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. It's no longer about him, his career, his ego. It's about being a good father, a good husband. 1998 to 2000. These are the quiet years. Robert isn't into music. He's not in the public eye. He's living a normal life in Florida, raising his daughter, working on motorcycles, trying to be a normal person. The money from her fame years is almost gone. Bad investments, overspending, the expensive lifestyle she couldn't let go of. She has to sell her Ferrari, her jewelry collection, many of the things she bought at the height of her fame. But strangely, he's happier now than when he had millions. The simple life has a rhythm that fame never had. He can go to the supermarket without being recognized. He can play with his daughter in the park without paparazzi. He's anonymous, and anonymity is a gift. December 1999. Robert is in his garage on New Year's Eve, working on a Harley-Davidson motorcycle He's rebuilding. He can hear fireworks in the distance, the world celebrating the new millennium. Think about where he was 10 years ago. On top of the world, millions of fans, endless money. And think about where he is now, a modest garage, grease-covered hands, a simple life. For the first time, he wouldn't want to trade one for the other. He's learned something fundamental. Fame isn't happiness. Success isn't purpose. And being known by millions isn't the same as being known by the people who truly matter. His daughter walks into the garage with his wife. "Dad, it's midnight." They hug him as fireworks explode outside. Robert doesn't know that in the new decade that is just beginning, there will be unexpected opportunities, a kind of comeback he could never have planned. He doesn't know that Vanilla Ice will have a second life, albeit in a completely different way. For now, he's just grateful to be alive, to have a family, to have survived the fall. The rest, whatever it is, will come when it comes. Episode 5, Reinvention. 2003, a television producer with a crazy idea contacts Robert. How about a reality show where 90 celebrities try to revive their careers? It will be called The Surreal Life. Robert initially rejects the idea. Participating in a reality show feels like admitting his career is dead, a relic. But his bank account is dangerously low, and the pay is good. He accepts. The show is exactly as ridiculous as I expected. Living in a house with other fallen stars, taking on strange challenges, being constantly filmed. But something unexpected happens. People see a different side of Robert. They see that he's self-aware, that he can laugh at himself, that there's more to him than the Vanilla Ice persona. The show is a moderate success, and more importantly, it reminds the world that it exists. 2004, during the quiet years, Robert has been buying cheap properties in Florida, renovating them himself, and selling them at a profit. He's good at this. He has an eye for design and isn't afraid of hard work. A producer sees potential in this. How about a show about home renovations, but starring you? The idea seems absurd, but Robert has learned not to turn down opportunities. The Vanilla Ice project debuted on the DIY network in 2010. The concept is simple. Robert buys dilapidated mansions, completely renovates them, and sells them. He combines his genuine building talent with his charismatic personality. The show is an unexpected hit. It runs for 9 seasons. Suddenly, Robert has a new career, not as a musician, but as a television personality and real estate expert. 2010. Robert has an epiphany. He spent 20 years trying to escape Vanilla Ice, to distance himself from Ice Ice Baby, to be taken seriously as something different. What if he just embraced him? He begins appearing on 90s nostalgia tours, playing alongside other acts from that era. At first, it's awkward. It feels like admitting defeat. But he discovers something surprising. There's an audience for this. People in their 30s and 40s who want to relive their youth. And most importantly, Robert can finally enjoy it. He's no longer trying to prove anything. He's simply putting on a show, making people have fun, celebrating what was instead of running away from it. 2012. Robert agrees to play at the Gathering of the Juggalos, an annual insane clown posse fan festival. He's known for being a brutally honest audience. If they don't like you, they'll let you know, from the moment Robert takes the stage. Things go wrong. The audience starts throwing things at him, bottles, trash, whatever they have at hand. It's a public humiliation broadcast on video that goes viral. But the way Robert handles it is revealing. Instead of running away or getting angry, he laughs about it. He posts the video himself on social media with the caption, "Even I think this is funny." This moment of self-awareness and humor earns him respect from a generation that grew up seeing Vanilla Ice as a joke. If he can laugh at himself, they can laugh with him instead of at him. 2016. After 19 years of marriage, Robert and Laura are divorcing. It's not dramatic or scandalous. They've simply grown in different directions. They have 2 daughters who are finishing high school. The divorce is difficult, but amicable. Robert moves to a smaller house and gives Laura a generous portion of his assets. His daughters choose to live primarily with their mother, which hurts, but Robert understands. He finds himself alone again, but in a different way than the loneliness of the 1990s. This time he has real friends, a stable career, and a purpose beyond fame. 2017. Robert is at a small club in Austin, Texas, playing an intimate 90s hip-hop show. The audience is about 100 strong, mostly 40-somethings reliving their youth. When he plays Ice Ice Baby, everyone sings every word. And for the first time in his career, Robert also sings with a genuine smile. It's no longer a burden, no longer an embarrassment, no longer something to run away from. It's simply a song he wrote 30 years ago, which changed his life for better and worse, and which he can now celebrate without the weight of all the expectations he once carried. After the show, a young man approaches. He wasn't even a year old when Ice Ice Baby was a hit. "My dad loved your music," he says. "He raised me listening to it. Thanks for continuing to do this." Robert realizes it's gone from being a phenomenon of the moment to nostalgia, and is now on its way to becoming something more lasting, a piece of cultural history that people can appreciate without irony. It's not the kind of legacy he imagined at 22, but it's real, it's honest, and it's his. End of Episode 5. Episode 6. Digital Rebirth. 2017. Robert, now 50, finally understands the power of social media. For years he ignored it, but now he sees it as a way to control his own narrative. He begins posting videos on Instagram and TikTok showcasing his home renovations, mixing construction tips with self-aware humor about his past. The videos become surprisingly popular, especially with Gen Z, who never knew him in his prime. For this new generation, Vanilla Ice isn't a punchline but a retro curiosity, almost cool in its absurdity. Robert becomes a meme, but this time he's in on the joke. 2018, a streaming platform approaches with a proposal to make an honest documentary about his life, unfiltered, without trying to rewrite history. Robert agrees, but on one condition: he has to be completely honest. No fake PR, no trying to make everything look better than it actually was. The documentary covers everything: the meteoric rise, the brutal fall, the suicide attempt, the depression, the slow rebuilding. It's painful to see his life dissected like this, but it's also cathartic. When it premiered, the response was unexpectedly positive. Critics praised its honesty. People commented on social media about its courage to be so vulnerable. 2019, Post Malone, one of the biggest artists of today, mentions in an interview that Ice Ice Baby was one of the first rap songs he heard as a child. Robert connects through social media. They end up in the studio together, not necessarily to create an official collaboration, but to talk, to exchange stories. Post Malone treats Robert with genuine respect, like a pioneer who opened doors. This interaction, documented on social media, changes something. Suddenly, Robert isn't just that guy from the 90s. He's a link in the hip-hop chain, someone who, for better or worse, was part of bringing rap to the mainstream. 2020. During the COVID quarantine, Robert does something he's avoided for decades. He listens to the Extreme in full for the first time in years. He's alone in his house, with a glass of wine, listening to the voice of his 23-year-old self. That youthful confidence, that boundless energy, that ignorance of what was to come. Instead of shame or regret, he feels something different: compassion. That kid was doing the best he could. He didn't know what he didn't know. He was talented and stupid, ambitious and naive, authentic and manufactured, all at the same time. "You did a good job, kid," Robert says into the air, to that ghost of his younger self. It's the forgiveness he didn't know he needed to give himself. 2021. Robert begins working with young artists who are having their first viral hits. He warns them about the dangers of rapid fame, about how the industry will consume you if you're not careful. Not everyone listens. Some have to learn the lessons on their own, but some do, and it's gratifying to know that their mistakes can serve as a roadmap for what not to do. He realizes that this is his real contribution. Not Ice Ice Baby, not the millions of albums sold, but this hard-won wisdom that he can pass on to the next generation. 2022, Robert is back in Miami, the city where it all began. He drives through the neighborhoods of his youth. Some have improved, others have worsened. He stops in front of the club where he had his first big show more than 30 years ago. It's now a restaurant. He walks in, orders coffee, and sits down on what used to be the dance floor. An older man recognizes him. "Vanilla Ice?" Robert nods. "Man, I remember when you played here. 1987, 88. You were amazing. They talk for an hour. The man doesn't mention Ice Ice Baby. He doesn't mention fame or downfall. He just remembers a hungry, talented kid who was willing to risk it all. That's the best version of me anyone could remember. Robert thinks as he drives home. Not the superstar, not the caricature, but the struggling artist, the believing dreamer. The phone rings. It's an offer for another nostalgia tour, this time in Europe. Robert smiles and accepts. He's no longer running from the past or desperately clinging to it. He's simply living it, with all its contradictions and complexities. It's taken 55 years, but Robert Matthew Van Winkle is finally comfortable in his own skin. Episode 7, Legacy and Lessons. 2022. Robert's daughters, now young adults, ask him to tell them the whole story. Not the edited version, but the real truth. They sit in their living room for hours as Robert relives every moment. The glory, the shame, the stabbings, the suicide attempt, everything. It's the first time he's been completely honest with them about the dark years. Do you regret anything? His eldest daughter asks. Robert thinks carefully. I regret how I handled success. But I don't regret the journey, because it brought me to you. It's a moment of family healing that has been decades in the making. 2023. Robert publishes his autobiography, titled Extreme, The Life and Times of Vanilla Ice. It's brutally honest, perhaps too much so for some. He covers every mistake, every stupid decision, every moment of success and failure. Critics praise him for his candor. Sales are modest but respectable. The most gratifying thing is the messages she receives. People who struggle with early fame, depression, and feeling like frauds. Your story helped me understand mine, they write. 2024. Although he will never be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Robert is receiving recognition in unexpected ways. A university offers a course on cultural appropriation in hip-hop that uses his career as a case study. Not as a villain, but as a complex example of how race and commercialization intersect in music. Robert gives a guest lecture. Students ask intelligent and difficult questions. He answers honestly. At the end, he receives a standing ovation, not for Ice Ice Baby, but for his willingness to critically examine his own legacy. 2024. At a hip-hop festival celebrating 50 years of the genre, Robert is invited to participate in a panel on the evolution of rap. He's sitting next to legends who once despised him. The atmosphere is initially tense. But when he speaks humbly about his mistakes, about what he learned, about how hip-hop saved his life even as it potentially exploited him, something changes. After the panel, one of rap's pioneers approaches him. I respect your honesty, bro. Not everyone has the courage to admit when they're wrong. It's not complete forgiveness, but it's a start. 2025. Robert announces his final project, a collaborative album with producers and MCs from different generations, exploring how hip-hop has evolved since the 1990s. It's not an attempt at a comeback. It's more of an artistic exercise, a musical conversation. Expectations are low, which frees Robert to be experimental and honest. When it was released, it received mixed reviews, but I respect its ambition. It sold modestly. But for Robert, the point was never commercial success. It was about coming full circle, about proving that he still loves the music that once made him famous and nearly destroyed him. November 2025. Robert is 58 years old. He's in Dallas, where he signed his first contract more than 35 years ago for a special anniversary show. The place is packed with people of all ages. Those who danced to Ice Ice Baby when it was new. There are kids who discovered it as a meme. Even Gen Z teens who find it ironically cool. When he plays the song, everyone sings along. And Robert realizes Ice Ice Baby no longer belongs to him. It belongs to people's memories, to their experiences, to moments in their lives he'll never know. After the show, he signs autographs for hours. Each person has a story. How the song reminded them of the summer of the 1990s, or their first school dance, or driving with their dad. Thank you for being part of my life, says a middle-aged woman. Robert smiles. Thank you for being part of mine. It's the most honest exchange he's had about his legacy. It's not about greatness or historical significance. It's simply about having existed in other people's time and space, having contributed something, however imperfect, to the shared human experience. Episode 8. The Man Behind the Ice. 2025. Robert sits in his Florida home, surrounded by a lifetime of memories. Gold and platinum records, tour photos, construction tools, family photos. A documentary filmmaker asks him the final question. Who is Robert Van Winkle after all? Robert thinks for a long time. I am someone who had an impossible moment of success, and it nearly destroyed me. I am an imperfect father. I am an artist that history will treat as a footnote. I am someone who learned that fame isn't happiness, that ego is dangerous, that authenticity matters more than relevance. He pauses. And yes, I am Vanilla Ice. I always will be, but I'm also so much more than that. Robert spends time with his grandchildren, teaching them to play music, to work with their hands, and not to be afraid of failure. He tells them stories, not just the glorious ones, but the difficult ones as well. He wants them to understand that success and failure are part of the same journey, that one doesn't exist without the other. His 8-year-old grandson asks him, "Grandpa, do you ever regret being famous?" Robert considers the question. I regret how I handled it. But without that experience, I wouldn't be here with you now. So no, I don't regret it. 2026. Robert announces his official farewell tour, not because he's dying or ill, but because he feels the time is right. The tour spans small and large cities, intimate clubs, and mid-sized venues. Each show is a celebration, not just of their music, but of surviving, of persevering, of finding meaning after the spotlight fades. The final show is in Miami, where it all began. The arena is packed, 3 generations of fans singing together. When Robert plays Ice Ice Baby for the last time, it's not with cynicism or shame. It's with pure gratitude for the strange song that gave him everything and took everything away, and that, in the end, taught him the most important lessons of his life. Robert writes an open letter posted on social media, addressed to his 22-year-old self at the height of his fame. Dear Rob, I know you think you've got it all figured out. That fame will last forever. That you're invincible. That money and adoration mean you've won. Let me tell you, you are wrong about almost everything. Fame will fade faster than it came. Money will disappear. People who tell you they love you today will forget you tomorrow. But you will survive. You will fall lower than you can imagine, but you will rise again. You will learn that failure is not the end, that reinvention is possible, that real meaning comes from the people you love, not from those who applaud you. Learn to laugh at yourself sooner. Be more humble. Listen more. Spend less. Save more. But above all, remember, you are more than a song. You always were. With love and hard-won lessons, your future self. The letter went viral, shared by millions. Many commented that it applies not only to fame, but to any form of early success that makes you believe you're bigger than you are. 2027. Robert is 60 years old. It's an ordinary day. He gets up early, drinks coffee, and works on a home renovation he's doing for fun rather than money. A young man recognizes him in the hardware store. "Are you Vanilla Ice?" Robert smiles. "I was. Now I'm just Rob." They talk for a few minutes about music, about construction, about life. The young man doesn't ask for a photo or an autograph. He just says, "Thanks for the music," and leaves. It's the kind of interaction Robert values most now. Simple, genuine, human. On a quiet evening, Robert reflects on his royal legacy. It's not Ice Ice Baby, although that song will outlive him. It's not the millions of albums sold. It's not the headlines or the controversy. His real legacy is the conversations he's had with young artists about handling fame. It's the houses he renovated and the families who now live in them. It's his daughters who, despite everything, respect him. It's the fans who tell him that his honesty about depression helped them through their own struggles. It's small, personal, imperfect, but it's real. And after a lifetime of chasing fake, shiny things, the real thing is all that matters. Robert sits in his backyard in Florida, watching the sunset. He's 60 years old and finally at peace with himself. He's not rich as he once was, but he's comfortable. He's not famous as he once was, but he's known by the right people. He's not young as he once was, but he's wise in ways only pain can teach. His phone rings. It's his oldest daughter. Dad, do you want to come over for dinner? The kids want to see you. Here I go, he replies, as he drives his daughter's house. Ice Ice Baby plays on the radio. Still, after all these years, it's still playing. Robert doesn't change the station. Instead, he turns up the volume a little and smiles. He hears the voice of his 23-year-old self, so full of confidence and arrogance, so unaware of what was to come. And instead of shame or nostalgia, he feels something simpler, gratitude. Gratitude for having had that moment, for having survived it, for having learned from it. Gratitude for being alive when I could easily not have been. Gratitude for a second chance, and a third and a fourth. The song ends just as he arrives at his daughter's house. His grandchildren run up to him, shouting, "Grandpa!" They embrace him with the pure adoration that only children can give, an adoration that has nothing to do with fame, money, or achievements, but simply with love. 2028, a hip-hop museum in New York is organizing an exhibit on the evolution of rap in the mainstream. There's a section dedicated to Vanilla Ice, not as a hero or villain, but as a complicated moment in the genre's history. The exhibit includes a glittering outfit he wore on SNL, gold and platinum records, newspaper clippings from his rise and fall, and a video where Robert speaks honestly about his place in hip-hop history. "I wasn't the best MC," he says in the video. "I wasn't even close. But in 1990, I showed the mainstream world that rap could be number one. I opened doors, sometimes for the wrong reasons, but I opened them, and better, more authentic artists than me walked through those doors and built incredible careers. My legacy is complicated, and I'm okay with that. History is complicated. We're all complicated." At the exhibition's opening, several hip-hop artists, some who criticized it in the 1990s, others from younger generations, appear. There are conversations, some uncomfortable, some healing. A legendary 90s MC, someone who publicly dissed Vanilla Ice for years, approaches Robert. "I never told you this, but when Ice Ice Baby hit number one, my label finally started taking my music seriously. I hated to admit it, but your success helped open doors for us." Robert nods. "I should have handled everything differently. I should have been more humble, more respectful of the culture." "Yeah," says the MC, "but you were 22, and the whole world was screaming at you that you were the greatest. I would have messed up too." They shake hands. It's not complete forgiveness, but it is a mutual recognition of humanity. It's nighttime. Robert is alone in his home music studio, a space he built years ago but rarely uses. He has a guitar in his hands. He learned to play during his dark years, and he's composing something new, not to release it, not to prove anything to anyone, just because he still loves making music. The melody is simple, the lyrics are honest. Started from the bottom, rose too fast, thought the glory would forever last, fell so hard, thought I'd never stand, but here I am, still a fighting man. It's not sophisticated, it's not revolutionary, but it's authentic. He records a song on his phone, not to share it, just to have it. A reminder that after everything, the fame, the fall, the struggle, the redemption, he's still an artist. He always was. On the wall of his studio is a photo of himself at 22, standing on the stage of Saturday Night Live. At the absolute peak of his career, he looks at that photo and mentally speaks to that young man. "We had a wild ride, didn't we? We did the best we could with what we knew. We made mistakes, lots of mistakes, but we survived. We learned. We grew. And in the end, that's all anyone can ask for, the chance to learn from our mistakes, to grow beyond our failures, to find meaning in the entire journey, not just the highs." He turns off the studio lights and walks to his room. Tomorrow he has a meeting with a young artist who just had his first viral hit and is feeling the pressure. Robert has agreed to have lunch with him, share some lessons, and be the mentor he never had. It's a full circle. The student has become the teacher, teaching not how to succeed, but how to survive success, how to fall gracefully, how to rise with dignity. Before we go to sleep, Robert thinks about the question a journalist asked him years ago. If you could go back and change one thing, what would it be? His answer then was evasive. But now, at 60 years old, and with all the perspective that comes with having lived a full, complex, and deeply human life, his response is different. I wouldn't change a thing. Every mistake taught me something I needed to learn. Every failure made me stronger. Every moment of shame made me humbler. Every moment of pain made me more compassionate. Life isn't about avoiding mistakes. It's about learning from them, growing from them, and using those lessons to help others avoid making the same ones. I was Vanilla Ice. I am Robert Van Winkle. And finally, after all these years, those two people are at peace with each other. He falls asleep with a smile on his face, knowing that tomorrow will be another day, another chapter, another chance to be better than yesterday. Vanilla Ice's story isn't the story of a hero, nor is it the story of a villain. It's the story of a human being, flawed, ambitious, talented, arrogant, broken, and eventually healed. It's the story of how fame can come too quickly, too young, with too little preparation. It's the story of how a society builds idols only to destroy them. It's the story of cultural appropriation, of second chances, of reinvention. But more than anything, it's a story of resilience, of surviving when it would have been easier to give up, of finding meaning when the world tells you no longer matter, of building a real life after your fabricated one falls apart. 38 years after Ice Ice Baby conquered the world, Robert Van Winkle is still here. He's no longer a superstar. He's no longer an object of ridicule. He's simply a man who lived an extraordinarily public life, made extraordinarily visible mistakes, and found a way, slowly, painfully, but real, to build something lasting from the ashes. Her story reminds us that success isn't destiny, that failure isn't final, that we are all more than our worst mistakes and best moments, and that sometimes the greatest victory is not reaching the top, but finding peace in the valley after falling from it. This is the story of Vanilla Ice, but it's also the story of anyone who's ever had a dream, pursued it with everything they had, discovered that achieving it wasn't what they expected, and had to find a way to keep going anyway. It's an American story, a human story, a story that deserves to be told without the veneer of nostalgia or the poison of cynicism. It's simply what happened when a Miami kid with an impossible dream discovered that sometimes your dreams do come true, and sometimes that's the scariest thing of all. Ice Ice Baby, Vanilla Ice Ice Baby, the beat that changed a life, defined an era, and eventually became something bigger than the person who created it. A permanent piece of pop culture, forever frozen in 1990, but living on in the memories of millions. Some love it, some hate it, but no one who lived through that era can forget it. And in the end, being unforgettable, for whatever reasons, is its own kind of immortality.